Welcome to Alaska EdVenture, hosted by Dr. Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. This award-winning podcast is your gateway to the heart of Alaska's educational landscape. In each episode, we'll explore the unique perspectives of guests who are shaping education in the last frontier. Join us on Alaska EdVenture as we share the insights and inspirations found in Alaska's K-12 classrooms.
Welcome back to the Alaska EdVenture podcast. I'm the host, Dr. Luke Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. And today we have a very unique conversation. I'm super excited to have two former, which it sounds so weird to say former, but two retired FNSBSD school board members. And so Chrya Sanderson and Erin Morotti, I'll have them introduce themselves in just a second, but they just finished up 6-year terms on the school board and have a lot of other experiences with the school district, and thought, how fun would it be to get in the podcast studio and reflect on your amazing tenure on the board? So welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So Chrya, let's start with you. If you could talk a little bit about yourself and what led you to be interested in running for the school board.
Well, before coming to the school board, I was employed at North Pole High School. So I was the Alaska A&E tutor and worked with Alaska Native students that were at risk. And in lots of our conversations, I was always telling them to use their voice, to do the research, have their facts, and stand their ground. And I don't know, something happened in town, and one of them came in and goes like, Miss Sanderson, I think you should run for the school board. You're always telling us to use our voice, and, we think you could speak up for us and you could get across the things that we encounter here at school, like when we don't have certain equipment, or some of our students don't have what they need. Maybe if you go down there and tell them, don't listen, and you can change things. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
I think that's most people's normal reaction, or it probably should be.
But I did.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's always been in the back of my mind. Whatever I did and served, was it in the best, or can it be in the best for our students?
Yeah. Chrya has been an amazing advocate for students throughout her career, and then certainly while she was on the school board. We had a reflective moment recently at a school board meeting, and I said, when Chrya talks, it's like a mic drop moment. Every time she speaks up, something beautiful is going to come out of her mouth, and something powerful. And so that voice will certainly be missed on the board. I love how fiercely you've advocated for our students here in Fairbanks. And so thank you for your service, and thanks for being willing to have the conversation today to reflect on your amazing career here in Fairbanks.
It's truly been my pleasure. Very humbling, but growth, and it's been my pleasure to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Erin, how about you? What initially led you to run for the school board?
I worked at the Interior Alaska Center for Nonviolent Living, and I was the finance director there for about a decade. And while I was there, kind of in the middle of it, I saw students that lived there at the shelter, undersupported students. And I knew that the community, through the school district, could do more. And I wanted to see more. I didn't know how at the time. And my boss at the time noted that Tom Bartels, who was a school board member, wasn't running for re-election, and he was the only one with financial experience on the board. And she said, you should do that. And that's silly. But she said, if you want to see this change, you need to step up and do it. And so I did. And it was a close race.
Yeah.
I think I only won by like 35 votes.
Yeah, which I didn't realize. There's this podcast might not come out for a couple weeks, but in today's paper, there was an article and some reflections that you had, and I did not realize your race was as close as it was. Yeah. 35 votes. That's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it's been wonderful ever since. I stuck with those two intentions and saw those through for the next 6 years, and grateful for all the time I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly we're grateful for your service. Having that financial background has been put to
the test.
put to the test.
No pun intended.
like week in and week out, year in and year out. We'll talk about finances later on in the podcast. But man, what a challenging 6 years to work through in terms of school funding and really having to make some difficult decisions. And so having somebody with an accounting background on the board has been really helpful. You know the budget unlike any others. For those that don't know, our budget book is about 400 pages long. And so if you don't have a lot of experience in it, you can get lost. And Miss Morotti was one of those folks at the board meeting that would line by line, we would go through it and you'd have some excellent questions.
Poor Andy.
Yeah. but what I love about that, I mean, you guys have become a really good team over the course of those years. And it wasn't like I got you moments. It was like we're working together and making sure that, you know, we're putting the investment where it needs to go, and you helped with that process tremendously.
And I learned so much. Oh my gosh. If you come into board service without any, you know, financial or with a ton of financial, you still learn so much by being on the board.
One thing I would say about Erin being our financial guru to help us along is that, you know, she always shared that knowledge.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I look at the budget book and I just go like, yikes.
Yeah.
You know, where do you start? But, you know, she was always one like, no, this is, you know, if you want to find this is what page is on, this is what categories under it. And it sort of starts to unveil the mystery, and you can start to feel like you can actually navigate your way through it. So she was very helpful with that. We all appreciate it.
Troy was just someone that would listen to me.
Like, Erin, show me.
Yeah. Which is great. So, well, you had been on the board for 6 years, and looking back, the nation has sure changed. The community has changed. Yeah. What are some things you've seen in terms of changes in public education or in Fairbanks since you've been here?
Yipes. Well, I think probably the better question would be what hasn't changed. Districts and educators across the nation are just tasked with so many additional duties. You know, when you are a qualified, certified person and you have expertise in certain subject matter, that's where your passion is, that's where your heart is, and that's what you want to be teaching. But because of disconnect of our nation being in turmoil, families struggling, teachers are tasked with quite a lot more. You know, children come to school, they're hungry, they're tired, they're fearful, they're not clothed properly. And no teacher, I don't care how great they are, can even tackle the academics for a student until those other social things are met. And I think is what's really it's just ballooned. Teachers are looking for resources outside of their districts to support the needs of their students, just so students can focus and be calm, be at peace, so that they can receive the academic instructions to grow and get a great foundation. So that's a real challenge.
I think, though, that our district responded really well. I mean, the first thing was first, we hired Dr. Meinert.
Oh, thank you.
But we've recognized the challenges. So, for example, what Ms. Sanderson was just talking about is, you know, student not being able to meet students' needs. One of the most important things that I wanted to see was an increase or focus on social and emotional learning, because we know that if students aren't sheltered, if students don't have housing or enough food or are tired or in a traumatic experience, that they can't thrive at school. And we learned that. And it's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's in order to get to that, we have to start with the needs of the students. And the district responded by providing social service managers, creating the social and emotional learning and prevention department, and really investing time and energy into responding to the students' needs so that they can thrive and meet their potential.
Absolutely. Yeah, you both have been huge supporters of our student support services department that provides those wraparound students for families and students. I mean, we help a lot of families with transportation or laundry services, or connecting them with other options to find employment and ways that they can support their students. So definitely a defining moment in your guys' careers in terms of really helping our student support services department grow and evolve in the different services and supports they provide our students. Yeah,
shout out to Bree Gray. She's a superhero.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. A lot of superheroes in our district.
Yeah.
Amazing educators. We talk a lot about decisions being based in what's best for kids. And Chrya, you already talked about that a little bit, but when we have challenging budgets or even just policy conversations, how do you frame that into what your vote is going to be at the dais?
A lot of listening to the information that's brought before us. We become aware of what situations are, but then we have to look at policy, we have to look at budget, and we have to look at the best way we're going to be able to meet the need. Mm-hmm. Do we have enough equipment? Do we have enough staff? Are they in the right locations? All of those things come into play when these decisions are coming before us.
Yeah. Well, I want to we've talked a little bit about challenges, but I do want to talk to challenges, and then we're going to talk about some successes along the way too. But maybe Erin, we'll start with you. What's a major challenge you've faced during your board career, and how did we overcome that as a school district?
It's been such an easy 6 years, so easy. Definitely finances. So I think it's that. What was it? Our first year, the requirement came down for us to spend down our fund balance.
That was your first year.
Yeah, and at the time, that's what we have to do. And then COVID hit, which would be really nice to have a fund balance when COVID hit. And I think we weathered that storm pretty well. But that was because of the CARES funds, and those funds were required to be spent by a certain time. And now, and I think the expectation was that somewhere, state, local, wherever, we would be able to be fiscally supported, and that hasn't happened yet. And so finances has been the biggest challenge and will continue to be, I think, for quite a while.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, that they're not a financial guru like Erin, the fund balance is like the school district's savings account. And so school districts are allowed to have a certain amount in savings. And back when you first were on the board, we had a healthy savings account in our local municipality. Asked us to spend that down, and so it was unfortunate timing for the school district because
nobody saw it coming.
Nobody saw it coming. But one thing, how you've overcome that is the board has made a concerted effort to really build that fund balance back up, and so that's been through a lot of discipline and hard conversations and decisions. But we're in a much better place than we were 2 or 3 years ago, where our fund balance was literally zero. And what a uncomfortable place to be in as both board members and a superintendent, because emergencies happen. You can't predict emergencies. And, we have 32 schools in the school district and a number of other facilities. And so the likelihood that something's going to break along the way in the school year and something big, that's pretty likely. And at times we need to dip into those savings accounts to be able to provide a facility repair or some kind of other remedy that we might need to put in place.
Yep. Yeah.
Any other challenges you can think of, Chrya, that you worked on and that we worked through as a school district in your tenure?
Well, I think the biggest one we're still working on, but it's been the staffing.
Yeah.
Because again, with the funding continually being a challenge, you have to attract people to come to your area. I mean, we live in a beautiful state. We live in the Golden Heart City, so we have a lot to offer in that way. The Aurora Borealis and hunting and fishing and just nature and beauty. But you can't sustain yourself through that. And so to be able to have staffing for our students and our buildings, that all depends on finances and funding. And I think one of the kind of great partnerships that has helped sustained us has been partnerships around the community, because this is a community that surely comes together to support any need that anybody, even just a community member, but when it comes to children, our community will band together and, fundraise. They depend to their own savings and, they do crazy fundraisers, but they make sure that somehow the monies flow through so that, students get what they need and things can be sustained.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've got 2 young children that I'm raising in the community, and I feel like Fairbanks has always punched above its weight in terms of the availability of options and opportunities for young children. I didn't have any idea the amount of things that are offered on a weekly basis for children in our community. You open up the paper or Facebook events now, and, I'm always curious what's going to happen the weekend ahead, and there's always something available for kids and families to do here in town, and that's amazing. And because of the different partnerships and community organizations that are out there supporting the work that we do day in and day out with our students. So being on a board is a lot about human interactions and compromise and working with fellow board members. And so how did you do that throughout your careers on the board? I mean, I think both of you navigated that really well, but that can be a challenge for some people. So how did you approach that work?
Well, for me, I make this statement all the time. I really do know my own weaknesses as a human, and I know what strengths I brought to the board. Not only being former employee, but past president, serving on the NEA board. So there was some growth just in my personal growth and journey. So when you come to a board, you basically bring everything that you have to that board, your good and your bad, your strengths, your ability to collaborate with other people, but you also bring a sphere of influence because you don't necessarily know all the people on the board. Like I only knew Tim because he used to be my former supervisor at Denali. But each one of the board members, I've always acknowledged that they had certain strengths and certain weaknesses. And then I think for me personally, when I came on the board, I didn't assume anything. I just started to try to get to know the people I was going to work with, what their perspectives were. And if I didn't agree, I didn't agree, but that didn't mean that I took it personal. I just tried to look at what our goal was. Whatever we were working on, we had to do it as a unit of people together. And I could have my dislikes or disagreements, but the final vote, when the final vote was cast, that's what I supported. And so that's the biggest thing that I learned coming to the board is you bring who you are and what your abilities, but you basically network with everybody and value them so you can glean, because certainly I've gleaned from, like I said, Erin with the numbers and how to do that. But from others, it was the writing and the speaking ability and how you writing all these emails.
So many emails. Yes.
When you become
especially when you're board president.
Yeah,
right?
when you're president, it's like, oh no, I don't want to answer any more emails. But the board that's the beauty of a board too, because everybody was offering and helped whatever thing that I wasn't strong in. Other people would say, hey, I can help you do that. And I think the biggest thing that I learned as board president, to ask. I was always like, I have to be strong, I have to be out this and I have to do that. And then it just came down to it. And I don't know if it was Erin or Brandy, and they said to me, you just need to ask us.
Yeah.
You just need to tell us what you need from us. We'll help you do it.
Yeah.
And, when you move yourself out of it the way like that, it becomes such more powerful time of leadership.
I love that. What a great example of humble leadership. I mean, I've talked about that on the podcast before, but today's leaders need to be authentic and humble. And both of you have displayed that over and over again. I think that's amazing because in the past, I think people felt like they needed to have everything figured out when they stepped into leadership position, and that's just not the case anymore. You can't know everything, and you truly do need to work with those around you to make good policy decisions. And one of the values of our school board and the state, the Alaska Association of School Boards, is having a leader in every seat. And so coming with that approach and that mindset of, we might disagree on different policy decisions, but I know you're a leader for the constituents that you represent, and you come with a tremendous amount of skills. And so I think that automatically builds those bridges if you're coming at conversations and debates with that kind of lens.
I just, right before this, I was at West Valley High School with the Educators Rising students, and I asked them, after I explained what a school board is and how to, what it's responsible for and how to get elected and what it looks like. I asked them, I said, now that you know, what do you want to see in school district leadership? And their number one answer, just across the whole class, was, we want people that want to learn in leadership. Yeah. It blew my mind, and it's so accurate. And they said that they don't want people to come in knowing everything, and they want people that will listen and learn and be educated.
I love that.
I did too. And I said, that is accurate. Wow. Look for that. Yes.
I mean, that's the field we're in, right? Yes. We expect that, and we hope that of our students as they go through their education, that they're ready to learn and that they're open to it. And then, one of the best things that we can do that I think we measure success by is when our students graduate, are they able to go pursue whatever passions they want to pursue, but can also learn along the way, right? They've absorbed enough from us and are open to that learning process, because we know when students leave our schools, they might change careers many, many times. And so in order to do that, there's going to be some learning involved. And so I love that our students are already tuned into that.
Yeah. Future educators.
Yeah. So Erin, you're masterful when it comes to community relations and connecting with the community. How important is feedback and community involvement when you're sitting on the school board?
Vital. It's absolutely vital. I don't know how many times, I don't think I have enough fingers and toes to count how many times. I know we both did it. We came in, and I'm a pretty stubborn person, so I, come in with an idea, and then a student or a family member or a community member will completely change my mind, and then I have to reevaluate everything. And I think that it's so vital to making decisions. We can't do our jobs without really good public testimony. In that same class, they asked if they could publicly testify. I was so proud.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was so proud. I was, okay. Yeah. And so proud to be able to say, not only can you testify, but you are now prioritized, and you will go first. And they lit up. Yeah. They were so excited. So, I think that it's absolutely vital. I couldn't imagine having to make the decisions that we've had to make without public testimony. And there's some that's productive and some that's not productive. And I think that as long as a line isn't crossed in the public testimony, I want to hear all of it.
For sure. And I run into people all the time that are either too nervous to come testify or they're busy during board meetings, but just your willingness to even have the conversations with board members and myself as we do daily life, that's a form of testimony as well. That's really important to our decision making. And so we really do want to be a community informed school district and reflect the values on what our community wants in their educational system.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you see that. When it was one of the things when we were going through the hiring process with you, and I'm so grateful. Miss Sanderson's one who led us in that search. But one of the things that you highlighted on was engaging with the community. And that's where this podcast was born. Like it all makes sense now, but you really show so much support to the board and model what it should look like to our community and to the board when it comes to engaging with our community.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about funding. Funding has been a challenge. at the school district, certainly since I've been here for, I think, 5 or 6 years now, and have been in the state of Alaska for 20. And we've had a lot of difficult budget cycles with flat funding for school districts, which really means lower funding, given the amount of inflation that we've seen throughout the years. And school districts have to work through that. We're subject to the revenue that we receive from the state and the borough. And so that's a little bit different for some of our listeners that are out of state. Some other states allow school districts to directly go raise their own revenue. So if the board wanted to prioritize something and they didn't have the money, then they could raise bonds or raise taxes or generate their own revenue. And unfortunately, here in the state of Alaska, our school districts do not have that capability. So we're 100% reliant on the funding we receive every year from the state and our local municipality, which in our case is the borough. And so how have you worked through those difficult budget seasons that seem to consume our spring semesters every year?
Well, number one, I think for us, we have to, and we continue to advocate. And advocating, you have to have conversations. You have to be one-on-one with a lot of people. You have to have facts. And be ready to answer the rhetoric kind of questions that keep coming to us and keep, popping up in our face. And then the whole process of how we, when we start our budget process, how soon we have to have it over to the borough, our student count, all of the little intricate placeholders that really need to be rearranged.
For sure.
That it might give districts some breathing room. As a wife and mother, I didn't have to project what my budget was going to be for next year doing anything like, of course, if I wanted to plan for a vacation or something, just had a budget, spent my money monthly, if there was some left over, whoopee, if not, I deleted something, but that's such a challenge. Just the whole, if a few things, and I keep thinking about it all the time, that if, when our budgets were due, how they populate our student count, if the governor decides to sign on it or not sign on it, all of those things seem to play an important part. And I think that the defending of how we spend our money constantly is a huge burden, because after you have the burden of taking a budget, working that budget, making it fit, and not knowing what your population student would be next year, what your staff population would be the following year, it's like we've been doing magic for
you have been. Because what Troy is really talking about, if you're not really tuned into the budget conversations in the state of Alaska, is the school district is starting to make their budget in February. That's when my proposed budget comes out. This last year, we had no idea what our final revenue source was going to be until the last week in June. And then we have all of these other competing requirements. We have negotiated agreements in place with our labor unions that say, you're required to let staff members know by such and such a time whether or not they have continued employment. And of course, that's well before we know what kind of revenue we have. And so if we could get to the place in the future where Alaska forward funded education or work through a mechanism so school districts knew what that number was, regardless of, we can have the debate all day long in terms of what the actual funding is. But even if we knew as a school district going into this spring what our revenues were going to be, those conversations would be at least a little bit easier and probably more meaningful from a board level, because you're not having to guess on what that revenue is going to be to base your budget off of.
Yeah, pre-COVID. Remember this?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. When we first got on the board, we went to Juneau. We go to Juneau every year, and that first time we went to Juneau, that was the fight. That's what we were advocating for, was forward funding, and for the legislators to look at the timeline and how ridiculous it is to make us create a budget without knowing our revenue. And then COVID hit, and then funding couldn't keep up with the cost cost of expenses. And so it's kind of taken a step back, a back seat to the need for funding in general. Yeah. But I do think that both things need to be advocated for sure.
Absolutely. And I think certain legislators are definitely getting there and understand the frustrations. And I think it's frustrating them too a little bit. I mean, and certainly on the local level for our assembly members. And so we're going to continue that conversation and just appreciate both of you for starting it. A lot of times with hard, big changes, it doesn't happen overnight, but these continual conversations year after year will move the needle in the right direction. So I want to talk about what's the single most or biggest accomplishment you think you had on the school board while you were tenured with the board? That is a big question.
Besides hiring you.
Oh.
That was a big one. I mean, we've been, the two of us have been through three, once Dr. Gabork and then Ms. Moline and then you. Yeah. So we
which is amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of change in your tenure in a short amount of time. And let's talk about that, honestly. Like, that would be an interesting conversation, not planned, a little off script, but like, what's that transition like for school boards to transition superintendents, and what's something that you might, tip or trick you might give future board members for navigating that transition?
You don't have plans to.
No, not at all. So hopefully, these are the babies being born right now, right? Like, I this is my community. I'll be real clear about that, and I hope to be here for many, many years to come and retire right here in Fairbanks. But maybe for other boards out in the state.
And you let us do that, and I'm going to be always grateful for that.
It was still tough. It was still tough. We had a great team. I think the smartest thing we did is we hired a team, people who were professional, who knew how to do that job. And we let them do that job. I think that's another thing. If you're going to spend money like that, and people have expertise and things that they have been doing, we need to let them perform those duties and be patient, stay out of the mix, stay in our lane, and, then take those different, and I think they led us in a really factual way, in a very methodical way, so that we could get just enough information, we could be kept up to date just enough to know what direction, where they were moving to, and there wasn't any gotchas or really surprises. And then we had to do our work. We had to do some serious work, and it was agonizing at the final hour because, there were some interesting candidates that could have took us in a different direction with their expertise. But, again, look at what's best for our community, what's the long-staying power of our community. And, I think we made a great choice. So
thank you.
Process.
So, it was quite the process, and super excited and humbled by the decision that you made. And especially because you had excellent candidates to choose from. That's what's so exciting, is that Fairbanks is a place that people want to come and live and work. And certainly from the superintendent point of view, it's an exciting place to come lead. And so that was great to see that we attracted a lot of top tier candidates right here in Fairbanks.
Yeah.
So let's close it today about maybe some tips or tricks or advice that you would give future board members on being on the board. And we can leave that open to go in a lot of different directions, but just curious, you've gained a lot of expertise and have been two board members that have been really successful in their boardsmanship. And so what kind of advice would you give future board members?
I think what I hope for is that they're going to have some big decisions this year. This budget is going to be a beast. And I hope that they can come in with a compassionate approach, because it's not always about saving dollars. Sometimes it's about saving lives. And it depends on the population that we're talking about and the programs and services that we can provide. And I hope that they can come in with not just where can we find savings, but where can we protect lives and use that compassion. And I hope that to get there, they listen. They listen and listen and listen. Miss Sanderson was probably that's the one thing I learned the most from her was how to listen,
Mm-hmm.
how to keep my mouth shut,
Mm-hmm.
and take it in, because you can't learn from people if you're not listening to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think the biggest thing that they need to do, again, besides listening, is they need to really understand that they are a team of people.
Mm-hmm.
You can be an individual, but once you've stated whatever your theory is or objection or where you want to go, the bottom line is you're there to do business for a district of children and staff.
Mm-hmm.
And, the policies and curriculum that's going to shape and be a motivator for everything else that's going to fall apart in the lives of those children.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at, number one for me has always been, is it best for the kids? Are our children going to be safe? Will a staff have what they need? Those are things that I don't take for granted, because in our district, we've come close to a few little things, but we've never suffered tragedies in that sense of what could happen at a school if something got out of control, or if a student was, emotionally unstable, or staff. Having a clean, working, learning environment, having people of all staff wanting to help you, to engage you in that's priceless. There's no price on that. So I think our district, and in all of its hardships, our staff, our community, and our students, we have seen them just push through, soldier through, come forward, and stand in such awesome way.
Mm-hmm.
You see the maturity, you see the caring, you see the compassion, and you see the camaraderie of teaching and students and community. You just can't buy that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as long as we can, keep the harmful stuff away from our students, listening, as Erin has talked about, our students have come before the board and talked to us. And like she said, there have been times I've been just staunch on, this is how I'm going to vote on this. And then you have these students who come and tell you, this is the life I'm living.
Yeah.
This is what I'm experiencing. And so you as a board member, you have a responsibility to take in all of that to make the best decision for students and staff. That challenge is not going to go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I love that both of you did throughout your career on the board is get out in our schools and see, what our students and our teachers and our educators are up to. There's no better way to actually see that than firsthand. And, I say that to you, other superintendents too, because I value that a lot. Like I try to make it a point every week to be out in our schools and connect with people, because you can hear it, but until you actually see it and feel it yourself, that's really important. And so any final parting thoughts that either of you want to leave with that we didn't get to today, but that you'd like to talk about?
I'll just say that I'm thankful for the class of administrators and educators and staff, and I'm very impressed, and I'm thankful for what pathways that we offer our students to succeed. Our CTE courses, our middle North Star College. We as a district, even though it was costly, our best school, they were costly, they were controversial. There were a lot of people said we shouldn't go in that direction, but it's what our students have told us they need. And so those are the things that I look back on, and I can tell and share people when I'm traveling, because they're all curious about Alaska and how we do things. But I tell them all the time, we graduate students who are doctors, police officers, they're healthcare providers, they're educators. they are New York Times columnists, Broadway show performers. Beetlejuice is coming to Anchorage, and one of our former students, Corbin Williams from West Valley, he'll be performing.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are things that I'm always going to cherish. The way our staff commits and keeps kids safe and provides for what kids need. So,
yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean, we produce amazing young humans that go on to be amazing adults and do amazing things every single day. So
it's been a challenging 6 years, but it's been a rewarding 6 years. And like I said, I've learned more in this last 6 years than I learned in my entire college education and work experience. And I am walking away hopeful. I know that the board and the administration, the experts that we have on staff, are going to be able to carry this work forward. And I've asked you and our board to keep working on the things that Ms. Sanderson and I started, and I appreciate that work. And yeah, thank you for having us here. This has been super fun.
Oh, well, thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast. This is the first time I've had a board member and on the podcast. And so super awesome that you're here. And just thank you again for your dedication and the service that you provided our school district and the community. It has been a challenging 6 years, but you guys have made it look easy from the way that you've led, and we're better for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this concludes another episode of the Alaska EdVenture podcast with Dr. Luke Meinert. Love the conversation today. And so thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you here next time. Thank you.